Hey, and welcome back to Wheat Beat. My name is Mike, and last time we talked about ventilation. And we're making some really great progress with my micro bakery. But before I show you the progress with that giant hood that we ordered, we're going to take just a half a step back and look at construction progress, because I know a lot of people want to see how that's coming along. So let's get right to it. So here we are in part 8 of my series on building a micro bakery from scratch inside my very own home. Don't forget to click the link up above if you need to get caught up on this series. Today it's all about progress. Here they are wrapping up the electrical. And as you remember from the past video, we had an electrical layout that was based on the spec sheet from the ovens we ordered. I have a 240 volts 70 amps on one side and 240 volts 60 amps on the other side. Now that's a lot of power. And it's a little more than I actually need, but if you don't want breakers blowing on or other issues, it's always better to overpower, not under. But this is where costs come in. Copper wire is very expensive, especially right now in 2021. In fact, many supply houses don't even have copper wire to sell you at all, if you can believe that. The wire you see here is actually for a very short run. It goes from the garage to the baking kitchen, which is adjacent to the garage, so it's a very short run. There's not a lot of wire required. But even so, this wire that I need, this copper wire, is $700 just for the bare wire. Now, I'm not talking about the installation or the other expenses. I just mean going to the warehouse, picking up just a small roll of copper wire is $700. So some electricians are turning to a different material, which is aluminum. Aluminum has sort of a bad rap. Back in the 80s and 90s, and probably even before then, they used aluminum to wire entire the electrical for entire houses, and they were a little bit prone to fire because aluminum can corrode where it connects to copper or other materials, and that can create sparks, and those sparks can lead to a fire. So aluminum got a very bad reputation, and today modern aluminum is not actually pure aluminum, it's an alloy of aluminum and other things, and so it's very resistant to that corrosion problem. Also, if it's installed correctly, there really is not going to be any corrosion or problems at all. So aluminum can be a vastly less expensive, much easier to find material, and the electricians, if they are competent, and all licensed electricians are, will be able to do a very good installation that's safe. Now, my electrician specifically said he would have no hesitation whatsoever putting aluminum wire in his very own house. And he also reminded me that the wire that's coming to your house on those high voltage lines, that's actually aluminum. And the wire that goes from the street to your house is aluminum. So it's not like this is some newfangled material that no one's ever used. This is used very commonly, especially in high voltage applications. And if you end up moving it from the entrance to your house to inside your house, where it normally turns to copper, there should be no issue with that whatsoever. Nevertheless, my electrician did concede that if given the choice and cost wasn't really the number one factor, yeah, he would prefer copper because it's a little less finicky, it's easier to install, and it has a slightly lower risk of causing problems very long term. So he agreed that if we can get copper, let's do copper. And in fact, that's what I ended up doing, copper wiring in the entire bakery. But as it turned out, when he went to get the copper wiring for the rest of the house, they didn't have any to sell him. I mean, like none in the whole warehouse. So we ended up doing aluminum wiring for my oven in the regular kitchen and also the laundry machine. Everything else is copper, so it's okay. I feel 100% sure that this electrician knows exactly what he's doing, and it's going to be a very, very safe and sound installation, and I have no worries about it whatsoever. But my advice would be that if you are offered aluminum to use for your high voltage wiring, just obviously make sure that it's a competent licensed electrician and that your electrician has some experience with working with that material. Now, as things were wrapping up, I actually had my mom come and visit, and she walked around the bakery, and I was going to show her how exciting all this electrical wiring in. It was like Las Vegas in there. And she didn't pay any attention to the wiring. She just looked around and said, "It's so dark in here. Why don't you have a window?" And my mom is so wise. She was absolutely right. There should be like some kind of a window that I can see out to the amazing view that's right outside that, right across from that wall. But if I do a window, what kind of a window? Is it going to be made of glass? Is it just going to be a hole in the wall? What am I going to do there? Now, as you know, I'm a big fan of renderings. And if you go back to the past video where we talked about how we did the planning, you know that I did some serious 3D modeling of the area so that I could really envision what I could expect. And there's a little bit of that going on here too. I don't want to just put in a window and then look at it later after they're done and think, oh, I should have moved it to the other side, or it's too big, or it's too small, or something like that. So I got on the computer and I just did some very rough modeling with Photoshop and Adobe After Effects, which I have some skill with. And as you can see here from the outside, this is looking at it from the dining room. I've ended up deciding to just do a hole because then I could pass things through from the bakery to the dining room, which is adjacent to that. And if it was glass, then obviously I couldn't do that. So we also did want a buffet piece in the dining room and also a TV. So this is actually just one concept. Here, the window is a little shorter. Here we looked at an arched window. I thought maybe that would look cool. But none of that really felt right, so I ended up looking at moving the window to the other side of the TV and making it much more narrow. The advantage of making this window, or what we would call a pass-through window, the advantage of making it narrow is that it would fit in between the existing studs that they already put in. And by doing it that way, I don't have to mess with any electrical wires that are passing underneath. I don't have to cut any of that framing. All they really have to do is just frame out a window or a pass-through in the existing stud. So it ends up being kind of narrow, and that works fine for me because all I'm going to really do is pass some food through there. I'm not going to be putting, a giant tray through there or something that's not going to fit. So I actually happy I get a view, I get some light. It's not too obtrusive and not too strange looking, and very functional. So here's the final rendering showing my crew, what I envisioned, and I even overlaid the cabinet maker's design on top to simulate the whole thing, basically how the whole thing will look with the buffet piece. So they went ahead and did exactly what I wanted, and just in time too, because they were doing insulation and drywall in parallel. I mean, literally while they were framing out this window, this pass-through window, the drywallers were like 3 feet behind them, working away. So this came just in time, as is sort of been the theme with this micro bakery, is that I'm making these decisions very last minute, which is never ideal, but hopefully if you're watching these videos, then you're gonna get ahead of some of those decisions. So here's a quick tour. So we're gonna walk through the entry here, and as you can see, they're starting to do the insulation as we talked about. You can see some drywall starting to come up on the walls. Up above in the ceiling, you see those can lights. We have a lot of that for a lot of extra light. In front of us is the new pass-through window. Down below on the floor is the floor sink that we talked about in a previous video with the link up above. Now we'll keep walking around here and turn around towards the wall where the ovens will go. And there's that wall. Now I'll pause here just to mention that if you look up in the ceiling, you'll see the hood vent duct, which is currently a 10-inch duct, which we need to convert to a 14-inch duct. And you'll also notice up above in the ceiling that the can lights are not present in that area, and that's because we're going to have a hood there. You certainly wouldn't want to have can lights above where the hood would go because they wouldn't do you much good there. And then down below you'll see the floor drain again, the second one, that we actually will need to move a little bit, and I'll talk about that in another video. You also see in front of you the electrical outlets for the 2 ovens. Next, they need to texture these walls, and then the long-awaited hood will need to get installed. Now, I know I promised a video about the whole saga of the hood installation last time, but I had to give a progress update first, so I promise that that video is next. And I'll give you a sneak peek. I think the hood is too big to fit through the doorway. Okay. So please subscribe to this channel so that you know when I upload that new video, which I'm sure is going to be entertaining. And until then, go bake something.